Right, Renowned. Here we are. We're back and we're cock lock ready to rock. My name is Stephen Morris. I'm your host. I'm the founder and CEO of Renowned Leadership. I'm also your amazing host here on Renowned Leadership Podcast. And today I got a special guest with me. Now, I want to be perfectly honest with you guys. I had a little minor surgery this morning, so you might see me wince a little bit every time I take a breath, or you might sound like my breathing's a little bit labored. I apologize for that, but rescheduling is such a pain in the butt that I didn't want to do it, and we don't let a little bit of pain stop us from doing whatever we want, because we're not victims. And this is something, being a victim is actually something that my guest and I today, we talked a little bit about before when we met up, and that was just the victim mentality. And so I'm sure we're going to dive into that today, which is going to be great, because that is definitely something we need to conquer so that we can be our best selves. But I'm not going to babble on anymore. I'm going to let Juan come on here and tell you who he is and what he's got going on and exactly why you should listen to what he says. Go ahead, Juan.
Thank you so much, Steven, and thank you for having me on your show. Super excited to be here and to have this conversation with you. And I really appreciate you for, pushing through the pain and still making this happen. So hats off to you for that, sir. So Juan Taveras, I am the CEO and co-founder of DEI Profinder. And DEI stands for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And we'll get into that in just a moment. But to share a little bit about me, I've been an HR, a human resources leader for over 13 years. And prior to that, worked in hospitality. So what makes me unique in this space is my focus on people and creating spaces where everyone can feel comfortable, welcomed, appreciated, and valued for all of their individual attributes and characteristics and personalities, right? So I thrive on creating spaces that allow everyone to be themselves. Okay, so that's sort of me in a nutshell. Let's see. I'm from the Dominican Republic. I grew up in New York City, and I now reside in Phoenix, Arizona. And like I said earlier, I'm an entrepreneur, so I have my own business now, and I help HR leaders implement better and more holistic diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies. And a lot of that has to do, like Stephen alluded to a moment ago, with leaders confronting their fears around a lot of this work. So we'll get into that in a moment, but I just wanted to share that in the intro.
Yeah, man. Like, and I know you and I started off, the conversation last time with, let me be perfectly blunt with you. And that is, I am not 100% not opposed to DEI. I believe in it wholeheartedly, because if you want the best team in the world, it's got to be diverse, right? Like that is how you get innovation. But at the same time, the social movement I'm kind of against, because I feel like it's putting such a vile taste in people's mouths. And you're right, a lot of leaders are scared of this because they're like, we got to be DEI. Like, and then that leads to hiring someone just because of their skin color, or just because of their religion, or just because, with no other factors taken into consideration. And that is very bad. And let's be honest, we don't want to get hired. You don't want me to hire you as my director of HR at Renowned just because you're Hispanic. Right. You don't want that.
Don't want that. No,
that's not good.
Yeah.
And so, and when I told you that, you're like, no, dude, I totally agree with you. I'm like, oh, well, I guess this won't be a banging show of you and I arguing about it the entire time, because we agree. But so, I mean, how do we view DEI and get that vile taste out of our mouth that, like, social media and stuff like that is putting in it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And here's the thing: so there's two things here, right? So I think we have to first separate what is happening in social media and even in the news, and with politics, everything that's going on now. They are hyper focused on a very specific aspect, right, of DI. And you mentioned an example just now that's very relevant, a diversity or a hiring for diversity, right? And it's a hot topic. And my take on it is you can't, that isn't all of DEI. That's one aspect. Like having a diverse team, to your point, is incredibly important, and it's going to be good for your business, but it's not the end game, right? Like it's not just about having the diversity. You also have to know now what to do with the diversity of your team, right? And
Mhm.
how to ensure that everyone on your team feels like they can bring all of their unique personalities and characteristics to work to benefit the work that you're doing, not just because, right? But it has to be to help achieve a goal that we're trying to work on together. So something that I do, and when I coach leaders on some of this work, is this is again one of the first questions I get is like, how do we get past, like I can't mention DEI in my in my office without it becoming a big explosive conversation. And I say, well, where like find a common ground, right? So can we acknowledge that we are more than the color of our skin, that we are more than our gender or our religion or our political views, and that we are all complicated and unique human beings, right? And that's the reality at the end of the day. So when you start there, when you start to recognize it, it's like, look, we're not going to agree like on most things, actually, when you think about it as as humans. I don't agree with even members of my family on a lot of stuff. And there are a lot of similarities there. But it's starting from that point that it's like, okay, there's difference here, and I do not need to be threatened by that difference. I can believe what I believe, and you can believe what you believe. But the goal here, now that we're together in this workplace, is how do we figure out how do we work together? How do we embrace our differences in a respectful and productive manner so that we can move the goals of this business forward? Because otherwise, we're just spinning the wheels, right? And burning cash.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such a waste of time, such a waste of energy. It devalues the values of organizations, of companies. Like I said, I come from an environment which is the military, which gives zero craps about anything. Like you can be a freaking Martian, and if you can fight, you're good to go. Let's go. And if you'll fight for us, you're good to go. Let's go. So I come from that environment. So like this whole notion kind of struck me hard. And I think that's why it's so that puts such a bad taste in my mouth. It's like, well, duh, of course you're going to do that. But I understand, like you said, everybody's different. And the one thing I wanted to caveat with my opening is, if you, to my example, right? Like if I'm going to hire you now, if I'm opening a business in the Dominican Republic,
Mm.
it would make sense to have that diversity hire. Like, oh, I need to go find the best candidates I have that are Dominican, or at least close to. Like I got to find that because they are going to speak the culture, they're going to speak the language, like they're going to know everything I don't. That's okay. I am fully, that's fine with me. It's just, we got to be really careful and not just do these crazy hires. And man, how much is Harvard paying now? Now that they had to let their president go, right? That's got to be hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's got to be such a huge waste of money when you make these hires and then they don't work out.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just wanted to make that little bit of a caveat, um, because I do feel like that's important to note as well. Now, I think, and I could be wrong, I'm very interested to hear your opinion on this. One of the biggest parts of what's going on with social media and all that stuff is we've been indoctrinated to believe perception is reality.
Mm. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on perception versus reality? Like,
Yeah, that's a really good question. So let me think about this for a moment, because this is,
I mean, so while you're thinking about it, I will
yeah.
give you mine. And I think again, the perception is reality is something that I was told all the time in the army. I'm one of the very first key philosophies I learned in the army was, perception is reality. It doesn't matter if, you know, I walk into the room and you're on your phone instead of working. What matters is that I saw you on your phone not working. It doesn't matter why you're not working. Maybe I was calling somebody because I needed more guidance. Maybe I was calling somebody because I've, you know, in my work, I found an emergency and I needed to get the proper people in place to handle the situation. There are a million, literally millions of variables that would alter the reality of the situation if you knew it beyond your perception.
Yeah.
So if I look at Juan's company and it's all Hispanic people, to perception that might be, oh, that's pretty racist. Like, where's the diversity there? Or the reality might be you started your company when you lived in the Dominican Republic, and that's the resources you had.
Yeah, yeah.
So we got to be very careful when we look at things and look at the whole picture, not just through the lens of our perception.
100%. Yeah. Okay. So that, thank you for that, because that helped me clarify my thoughts. My mind went to, perception is reality. It's just how our brains are wired, unfortunately, right? We are, I can't remember this. We're hit with like 11 million bits of data every minute or something like that. And our brain can only process a very, very small percent of that. So the vast majority of the information that we are sort of engaging with, we are not even aware of. So our brains create these shortcuts, right? To sort of sort this information, because it needs to figure out quickly, is this going to put my person in danger, right? Am I in danger? Is it safe, not safe? Like, we're making these calculations at all times. So our brains are really good at sorting and filing information very quickly. So when we see a meme, when we see, a headline or whatever it might be, some quick data point, our brain is going to sort it based on past experiences, based on a number of other things. But to your point, that is, again, going back to the fact that we don't process everything that comes our way. There are so many things that go unaccounted for, right? So we make assumptions based on our past experiences and things like that. But there are so many different variables and scenarios that could be happening that we need to take the time to consider, and not to say that we have to consider every single possible outcome or possibility, but just be aware that there is that possibility that you could be wrong, that you might not have all the information, or that your immediate perception might not be complete or accurate. So when we do that, when we take that pause, then we force our brain to think more critically, to ask questions, to be curious, to say, to use your example, I like that one. It's like, so and so is on the phone. Has this happened before? Right? So have you caught this person on the phone before? Is this a chronic issue? Or is this the first time? What else? What other evidence do you see? What is their look on their face? Are they concerned? Are they worried? Are they, in shock? Any, complete the picture and try to figure out, get other context clues around that to figure out if this is actually what you think it is, or if it's something else. And then when you don't have enough information to validate or not your perception, then dig deeper, right? So that's what I say whenever I see an interesting, I'll call it interesting meme or some kind of thing on social media. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Let me now go to Google, or let me go to LinkedIn, or let me, try to back it up. Who else is talking about this topic? What else are other people saying? So you get a more holistic view of what's happening.
I think you did a much better job explaining that than I did. Well done, sir. No, but that you're absolutely right. Our brains, yeah, we automatically want to go to the quickest route to get to the answer possible, and a lot of times that's very detrimental to us. Our brain does it to save energy, but a lot, shortcuts rarely work out in your favor, and that includes your brain, unfortunately. So when it comes to developing teams and leading teams, one of the things I know you talk about is not just ensuring that you have a diverse culture in your work environment, that you have a diverse way of thinking in your work environment, you also want your leaders to understand that leading is not about them,
Yeah,
which I would really love for you to take 5 or 10 pegs deeper and really narrow that down what that means.
absolutely. Yeah. And I remember from our first conversation, this really, we really connected on this because of, your time, all the service you've given this country and what it means to be a team member, right, in the military.
Mhm, mhm,
There's some bridges there that I can make when I think about leadership in the workplace. Um, we are, and I'll use your term because I really like this. We are often indoctrinated, right, early on in school, and even early in our careers. If you do anything like an internship or some kind of post school program where you're being groomed to be a leader, it's often a focus on the title, the pay, the bigger responsibility. It's all about you, right? It's like you're going to be this you're responsible, you're accountable, you're all these things. So you carry this leadership carries this weight, but it isn't on what's most important. When what the realization that I made in my own leadership journey is that I am only as good as my team, right? So as a leader, I am if depending on the organization that you're working for, but typically as a leader, you're doing less of the work and you're working more through others. So in order for you to do that well, you really have to get yourself out of the way, right? You have to focus on the people that you are leading and developing them and making sure that they feel valued and included and like they can leverage their strengths to do the work and that they're working well together. So you're also building team and like community and relationships among the people that you're leading. So your job now becomes developing the future, like basically your replacement is the way that I think about it. Like you have to work your way out of your leadership role and ensure that the next person who's going to fill your position is ready and capable to do that. Because if it's all about you, then oftentimes I see that backfire. Like then you have a team that doesn't respect you, doesn't trust you, doesn't value you because you haven't given them any of those things. And also a team that hasn't been developed. So you're actually doing them a disservice because they'll eventually move on to work for someone else, and they're going to be not fully prepared to take on those new responsibilities, right? So it is our duty as leaders to develop the next generation of people that are gonna lead, and focusing on others is the key from my perspective.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree. And a lot of times I equate it to parents, right? Like I know you're a father and you absolutely love your kids. And having kid time is very important to you because as the children's father, it's your job to help them develop and mold them into productive, good adults along that way of them growing up. Um, Leaders are much in the same, right? We groom our kids to leave us
Yeah,
eventually,
love
right?
that.
As leaders, we need to groom our teams to leave us and replace us
Mm,
eventually, right? And so that's kind of what I equated to. And I love that you brought up community because when I built Renowned, I built it on the 3 C's of leadership: community, consistency, and clarity.
mm,
And community is first for a reason because like what you were saying, when you're focused only on yourself or what does Steven get out of this work environment, or how much do I get paid, where's my parking spot, all that other nonsense,
yeah.
your team, they're going to emulate your example. So if that's what you're focused on, that's what they're focused on.
Mhm.
If you're focused on, oh my God, Jane's mom just passed away from stage 4 breast cancer, and we need to rally around her and help her through this grieving process so that we can get her back to work and get her back at 100%, then that's what the team is going to focus on because that's where you're leading.
Mm, I love that. Yeah. And having each other's backs. I think that's so important when you're building team and community. Um, Recognizing that so when you stop putting yourself at the center of everything, so will your team. And everyone's gonna start to look at each other as sort of the equal parts to the whole, right? Um, Yeah, and because as soon as you said that, my mind went to, I have so many examples of times where that has been necessary on teams where it's like, yo, this person is going through some stuff, a divorce or grieving a loss or whatever it may be, and they need support in this time right now. Right. It's the team needs to pick up a little extra slack. And
And
inevitably somebody, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and that's okay because that's life and that's what happens. And
Absolutely.
the days of work is work and personal is personal, and they don't intermix. Like that whole concept. First of all, the days of that are dead, and that
Mm,
whole concept to me is just completely stupid. Because if my dad dies, I'm distraught. There is no shutting that off,
right.
right?
I can put that
If
aside.
my wife and I get divorced, I'm distraught. Like there are problems in my life, and I'm not going to give you 100%. So if I work for Juan, then I'm coming to work for you, and you're paying me the same salary, and I'm giving you maybe 50%.
Mm,
So you're effectively paying me for nothing, right?
yeah.
And so wouldn't it be better to pay me if you can, find ways to utilize me to where I'm not as um what's the word? I don't want, the word that came to mind is destructive, but I don't think that's the right word. Um just where my tasks are things that need to be done, but they require less thought, they require maybe less effort or whatever. The rest of the team picks up my daily tasks, and we come together. Maybe it is some paid time off, maybe it is whatever, but it's going to be okay. And the thing when you do that is the person that you're doing that for, they're so grateful. They
Mm,
feel so grateful when they return. They feel like they owe everybody. And so you're going to get that reciprocated to you most of the time, a thousandfold.
absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And then when you set that example, then every other person on that team knows, oh, if I ever had to go through some difficult situation, I know that my team's got my back because everybody, you set the example with one situation, and everybody will pick that up. Um, but then here's just to be devil's advocate here, because this is coming from HR, I've heard it all. So inevitably you'll get that team member that says, oh, it's not fair, so and so gets to take time off and we have to do the extra work, and this is not in my job description, and I'm not getting paid extra to do this extra work, etc. So this is where, from my perspective, this is where the idea of equity comes in, right? So this equity, and here's something I'll say that I often blows people's minds when I say this. um, Equality is not always fair, and fair isn't always equal, right? Because it's not about giving everyone the same thing. It's about giving people what they need when they need it. So if a team member on your team, as an individual on your team, needs support, we should give it to them. They deserve that from us, from their team members, to give them the time that they need to grieve or to go through whatever it is that they're going through. We have your back. We're going to take on this extra work because we know that individual, to your point, will do the same for us if we were ever in that situation. And instead of comparing like apples to apples or oranges, it's like be grateful that you're not going through a loss or a divorce or whatever the situation is, and be like come from it. I love what you opened with saying, like, we're not victims, and that victim mentality is a big it's a roadblock in a lot of these situations. So we got to get people to stop putting themselves in that victim role and play more of a hero, and not just for the people around them, but for themselves too, you know?
I love that. And that's where being a leader comes in. Like, a lot of what we're talking about right now, that's just kind of management type stuff. But when you start talking about, playing devil, I don't think you're being devil's advocate at all because that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's just the way we think a lot of times. And you're right, it isn't fair. It's not fair for me to ask you to do double the work just because someone's going through some stuff. You're right, that's not fair. But here's the thing. It needs to get done. You work here with me and we're going to get it done some way or another. And this is my opportunity to help coach you through this victim mentality. Now that I may have not seen that before, now I'm recognizing and I see it, and now I get to coach you through it. And to your point earlier, I get to help you become a strong leader because I'm sorry, there's no such thing as a strong leader and a victim at the same time.
That's dope. I agree.
uh, thank you. So, and that also leads into another one of your big talking points, which is leading with psychological safety.
Right.
And when we create these communities, these environments, we help people feel psychologically safe. And I love that, because that, in my opinion, is where innovation and
Mm.
breakthroughs happen. Like, they live right on the cusp of that psychological safety.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because what, in order to get innovation and creativity, it's almost impossible to get that without risk taking and failure, right? You have to try stuff, get it wrong, learn from it, try again, right? So it's that cycle of repetitive, quick, easy, not easy, but fast failures, and then you improve after each iteration. But we are wired as human beings, going back to the brain. I keep talking about the brain, to not take risk or step out of our comfort zones if there are any signs of danger around us. Now, when we think about danger, we think about oftentimes it's physical safety, right? Or our physical environment. But our psychological safety is just as important. So if my boss, if my leader is not, if I sense that they are not respecting me, that they don't value me, that they don't see me for who I am, then I'm not going to be open to asking questions or challenging ideas in a productive way, right? Not or saying, hey, I actually don't think we should do that because of XYZ, right? So like going against the status quo, or even speaking up against someone in an authority position. So if we can't do that, then forget innovation and creativity. Like we're stuck in this mode of preservation because we're constantly trying to figure out, am I safe or not, right? So when you create a culture where people can ask questions and they can as for lack of a better word, just like be silly, right? Like I think it's about we there's this term, like there's no such thing as a stupid question, and I believe that wholeheartedly, because if a question is on your mind, chances are it's on someone else's mind. So don't hold back, just ask. And if you if as leaders we create a culture where your team doesn't feel stupid for asking a question, or feels like they can say, you know what, boss man, I actually disagree with you, and here's why. Um, then we're not going to get the fruit of that environment, which is innovation and creativity.
Right. And I'm going to take it a step further. When you're talking about community, psychological safety, all these things, one of my biggest irritants when I'm working with a client is when they're like, we have so much conflict, we got to get rid of this conflict within the organization. It's like, do you need to get rid of the conflict, or do you need a safe, constructive place for that conflict to happen? Because while psychological safety is the cornerstone of creativity and innovation, that's a lot of times that's not going to get discovered until it's tested, and is going to be tested through conflict. I love conflict. I think conflict, when it's done the right way, is the best thing you can have on a team. And I have a friend who talks about this, and he talks about his business partner, and they used to fight all the time, like get loud, not slam things, but they would just get verbally loud. And the whole team would just, at first they're like, whoa, these dudes hate each other. But at the end of the day, by the end of the conversation, they had worked through their process, and they've found the solution through that process. And then it just became, eventually for the team, it became background noise. Now, I'm not saying that is necessarily the environment every organization needs,
Mm.
but I'm saying that that's an environment that they created intentionally, that they found worked for them. And that is how they were able to change the face of what they were doing, and how they were able to innovate, because they had that conflict. More importantly, they had that conflict resolution.
I love that. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think I love what you said, that organizations should stop trying to get rid of conflict and instead focus on how to have productive conflict, right? Because conflict is inevitable. Again, when any space where there are two individuals, regardless of how similar they are, they will eventually disagree on something, or have a difference of opinion on how to do, especially in business, right? How to pursue a business goal, and conflict will arise. So instead of trying to avoid it, how do we as leaders learn to embrace it and maintain a productive dialogue throughout, right? So I'll share a personal example here, because as you were talking, you're absolutely right that those environments are not appropriate maybe for everyone, but it's good. It's good, especially if it's built into your culture. Like if people expect it, like if you've now, you and your business partner have this reputation for like going at it every now and then it's okay. But if it's happening, if it's like a surprise or coming out of nowhere, it might have a negative impact on some folks. And I'll share an example here because, as I said earlier, I'm from the Dominican Republic, and in our culture, heated debate is very common. I grew up around, grown men just yelling at each other, but they were just having a conversation, and they were very passionate about their perspectives, and that came out in shouts, or it was never. I'd sometimes experience anger, but it wasn't always that. It was just like passion, right? So I was very accustomed to other people, individuals going at it, having shouting matches. In my mind, they were like, well, they're having a conversation. They're resolving a conflict, and eventually this will end. And hopefully it doesn't end in like a physical in a physical way. But I grew up around that. So I was never put off or concerned when I saw it in the workplace. And I remember this one time, a staff member came up to me. I was an HR leader, and this is going on in the break room. Two individuals are having a discussion, and it became heated, and they're shouting at each other. And somebody comes to grab me. I go in there, and I'm just like listening for a moment, because I wasn't sure what was going on. So just took a moment to like take in the situation, and then I was like, oh yeah, they're just having a conversation. And the other person was like, aren't you going to do something about this? I was like, I don't think so, unless they want me to. Like, I think they're going to come to a resolution eventually, and it'll be fine. But it was just interesting for me to, it's like, I'm used to that. This individual wasn't, and assumed that shouting meant a bad thing, but I actually saw it as a productive way to resolve a difference, right?
Right, because we can talk about all the self-work and all the self-help and all that nonsense. At the end of the day, we are human beings, and we have tempers, we have egos, we have pride, we have all that stuff. And we have to deal with it. And I'm like I said, whatever that means in your environment, you need to create
Yeah.
it intentionally,
Mhm.
because otherwise it's going to become toxic, right? So maybe in that specific environment you were talking about, it wasn't the norm, it wasn't created intentionally. So, like you said, that can cause damage. But when you intentionally identify what you want that to look like in your organization, then you can intentionally build it,
Yep.
and show people the example and be the example. Which leads me to the next big thing you like to talk about, which is values based leadership. Right? In order to be able to do this as a leader, as an organization, whatever, we need to know what our values are, and
Mhm.
we got to stay true to those values at all times.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'll take this back to my own personal leadership journey, because so much of it was, in the beginning, was sort of me trying to be this person that I thought I had to be, right? So trying to live up to someone else's expectations or someone else's definition of leadership. But when I started doing more of the self-exploration work and getting in touch with my personal values, that's when my leadership brand sort of I found it, right. It sort of blossomed out of me when I connected my personal values to the work that I do. So and when you do that as any individual who takes the time to explore what their personal values are, and understand how they relate to other people, how they relate to the values of the organization, the culture in which you're working or leading, um, it helps you better understand what those areas are where challenges might pop up because there's a misalignment. or in moments of disagreement or conflict, you can sort of lean on your values to help you get through that, because our values, they're I've read somewhere that they don't often change. Like, they might change over the years, but there are a core set of values that really are connected to your core and set of identities. So knowing them and leaning on them during those moments really helps you to stay grounded, right? And not lose not lose your temper, or lose your cool, or take anything personally, right? Because there's so much out there, to your point earlier about pride and ego, right? It's so easy for us to flare up when things happen. But if you remember your values, you remember, who you are and how you're wired, then that really helps you navigate those moments.
Yeah, absolutely. And, as leaders, we have to be not necessarily thick skinned, but we have to be comfortable in our own skin.
Yeah.
And we can't be comfortable in our own skin if we don't know the foundation in which we're built on. So I absolutely agree. And I would love to hear your practices for first of all, identifying your values.
Yeah.
Because, for me, I require at least 3 hours of just solitude a week where I get to just spend time with myself and think and reflect on myself and, whatever, meditate, mindfulness, whatever I decide to do, but at least 3 hours a week. What are your practices that you do that self work where you identify the core of who you are?
Yeah, good question. So I'll answer that in two ways. So I'll talk about my daily practices just to stay grounded, but how I initially discovered my values. There's a couple of activities, and I'm happy to share links to these because they're available online and you can do them. One is an activity where you're asked to reflect on moments where the first moment is a time you felt anger, hurt, like a deep level of negative emotion. So think about that moment and identify what was missing in that moment, what was happening, etc. So, and then you can sort of narrow that down to a handful of words or phrases that come to mind as you sit with that memory. And then do the same thing for a positive moment, a time that you were incredibly happy, felt like you were flowing and everything was going well, and you were doing your thing, right? So, and then identify those handful of words or phrases for that. And then sort of your day to day, like you're not low, not high, just middle of the way, nothing unusual. What's happening in those days? Like, what are the routines that keep you steady and balanced? And that's why, so those three parts, that's it for that activity. And you could start to identify some of those values. I would couple that with this other activity, which you could do alone, but I would couple it with this one, is a value sort. So and this is where I can send you the link. There's places online you can get a list of hundreds of core values. And then you go through the list and highlight the ones that resonate with you, and you dwindle that down to, like 50. You do that again. Which of the 50, which one resonate with you the most? You dwindle that down to like 20. You do that one more time. And then if you've got that first activity, those examples fresh in your mind, then that'll help you cull through that list fairly quickly. So you end up with a list of 5 to 10 words or phrases that are a huge, aspect of who you are.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead, finish.
The other part was about my daily. So I also do right now, because of my kids and work schedule and everything, I only get 30 minutes in the morning. So I either walk. There's a nice little walk path, a walking path near my house that I go on and just take in. I like spending time in nature and I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, so I live in the desert and it's beautiful out here. So doing that, and then prayer whenever I can get 20 to 30 minutes of prayer time. That helps.
I love that, and I feel like that's one of the most avoided or ignored pieces. And someone and I were talking about that just yesterday, I believe, or the day before. Doesn't matter. You don't know. recently I was talking about that with somebody, and it's like, look, I believe you're Catholic. I could be wrong.
I am, yes.
Yeah, okay. I'm a Christian. Like we're not trying to preach at you, right? Like we are spiritual creatures, whether you are an atheist, agnostic, Scientologist, whatever the case. Like it's scientifically proven that we are spiritual creatures
Yeah.
to an extent. And when that spirituality isn't aligned with who we are, what we believe, what our core values are, our purpose, our why, where are we going, why are we going there? When we're out of alignment and that spirituality piece a lot of times isn't there, I find just your general mindset becomes toxic, let
Mm,
alone your mentality, your actions, things like that. That spirituality piece is so core. So whether that's meditating or praying, reading, like you got to find out what that means to you and how to get in tune with it and keep it aligned and do that work.
100%. Yeah.
So when we talk about um and this is kind of off topic, and or not off topic, but we're kind of circling back to DEI.
Mhm.
Um, when it comes to other religions, because I feel like that is such a um, easy can of gasoline to throw on a fire. What is your best practice? Because I believe everyone has the just the innate right to be the religious person that they are, whether they're Muslim, they're devout Catholic, Jew, Hindu, like whatever. You have the right, but at the same time, I also agree that people have the right not to pay attention to it if they don't want to. So, do you agree that the best practice is just no religion here? Or is it like one of those things, let's find a way to tolerate each other, find that common ground, and allow everyone to be who they truly are?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I have examples in my mind of workplaces that I've done both ways, right? So that were very open and inclusive of all religious practices. They even had prayer rooms and what are the chapels and those kinds of things, right? In their buildings, in their offices, and other places where, to your point, it's just like religion is don't know, don't care, and don't bring it into the workplace. And what and this is a very limited experience, right? So this is my own view on this, is that I saw more openness and acceptance for other religions and more curiosity about what those other religious practices were in workplaces where it was allowed, right? So if I'm Catholic and I'm working in that environment, and I see that my Muslim colleagues are going away at a certain time every day to do this ritual that they do every single day, I'm going to be curious about that, or at least I was. So I got to learn a lot about other religions and their practices and how there's a lot of similarities in what we believe, but there's obviously a lot of difference. And it was for me a cool learning experience. Going back to though, I'll tie this back to the values piece, right? Because I knew my values and knew what I was grounded in, I never felt threatened by another religion or someone uh, practicing their beliefs, right? It wasn't, no one in that workplace was trying to convert anybody else. It was just about allowing me to be myself. And it wasn't about who's the better religion or you should all do what I do. Um, because what happens, I think, when you don't allow it, it going back to how we started the conversation, is like you're shutting down an aspect, or trying to, because you can't, to your point, you can't just leave it at the door, right? Like this is who you are and how you're wired. But if my employer doesn't see that, then I'm not going to be, I will likely be less fully present, less engaged and won't give you 100% because I'm hiding an aspect of who I am.
Yeah, one, I absolutely agree with you, man. Um, and one of the coolest experiences about all my travels is like I've got to talk to some of the most senior religious experts in the world. And I got to sit for 2 weeks and talk about Muslim versus Christianity and Muslim versus Catholic and Muslim versus Judaism with one of the top imams in Iraq. It was so cool. And this dude, he was so gracious and he was so kind. And he just wanted to teach me. He
Yeah.
wasn't trying to convert me. I know ultimately, like, we love when people are like, oh, yeah, your religion's right. I'm going to convert. Like, we love that. But that's not what he was doing. He was just feeding my curiosity.
Mhm.
Excuse me. And so I think you're absolutely right. When we create a work environment where we're allowed to be genuinely who we are, whether it's um, religion, to an extent, politics. I understand that that's a different animal entirely to tackle. But even still, I don't want to be ostracized just because I believe in this one political thing and
Mhm.
everyone else doesn't. I'll talk to you about it, but I don't want to be fearful for losing my job because I'm the outlier. Right. And I
Yeah.
feel like that's something that happens heavy in today's society is people they try to hide those political beliefs, which again, like what you were saying, one, it goes into your values. That's who you are. That's why you believe what you believe.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, I find it destructive, I think, that we've taken such a polarizing, I guess, I don't know if that's the right word, view on just separating everything like that and just trying to strip people down to their very base self and not allow them to be the complex individuals. So that's going to wrap it up on, man. This hour's flown by. I thank you so much, my brother, for tolerating my low energy. I know this is a lot different than what you're used to, but like I said, I just didn't want to reschedule. And I really appreciate you showing me some grace and really carrying the conversation for me. That was really awesome of you, brother. So thank you so much.
Hey, listen, it was awesome to be on your show. Thank you for having me. And I don't feel like I carried that at all. You were, yeah, you were great questions and some great nuggets here from you too.
Right on. I appreciate that, man. So go ahead and tell people how they can find you, get a hold of you, maybe hire you, get more about what you're putting out into the world.
Absolutely. Yeah. So LinkedIn is probably where I hang out the most. You can find me. I'll make sure you have the link to my profile. But if you search Juan Taveras, DEI Profinder, I should pop up. Yeah. And if you're a leader looking to create a more inclusive workplace, to be more balanced and open as you develop the leaders on your team, happy to support that work through either coaching. I also do training workshops and those kinds of things. So yeah, hit me up and we can chat.
Yeah, right on, man. And of course, I am going to have all your links in the show notes in the description below. So make sure you guys go give one lots and lots and lots of love. And y'all know the deal. Like, I only bring on guests that I truly believe in. And I know, like, I truly believe in the work Juan is doing, and I will hang my hat on his coat rack every day of the week because I think he's doing phenomenal work. So if this is something that you're trying to introduce into your company, if this is a problem that you've recognized, get ahead of that problem and get Juan and get him inside your company so he can help you solve the problem before it becomes destructive. Of course, once you're done doing that, head over to renownedleadership.com. I got a new program just launching called Purposeful Success. It's been out for about 4 months now. But if you're ready to achieve whatever success means to you personally, purposefully, and with intention, then it's the program for you. So go check that out. You can also just click book a call. It's at the top middle of the screen, and you're going to come talk directly to me. No one on the team. You're going to come talk to me. So I would love to hear from you. Of course, subscribe, like, follow, do all that fun jazz. And again, audience, thank you so much for tolerating me. I know my energy is down quite a bit from what it normally is, but it is what it is, man. And like I said, we got it done like champs, and we never bow down to pain. So, Juan, my brother, thank you so much. It has been an absolute pleasure, bro.
Same here, Steven. Thank you.
All right, so that's going to wrap it up this week, everybody. I will see you all next week. Same bad time, same bad channel. And in the meantime, never forget, lead like a champion. Goodbye, everybody.